And welcome back to the Livingston Parish News Weekly Show, a podcast brought to you by the Livingston Parish News. My name is McHugh David, publisher and editor of the news. Appreciate you guys joining us today. We have Parish Councilman joining us today. Lots of very interesting situation going on at the council level with some permitting, but as you've kind of worked through it, the council's kind of worked through it. Probably should have been handled in a different spot. But first, we're going to give you a chance to introduce yourself. So, good afternoon, sir. How are you?
I'm just fine. My name's Jeff Ard. I'm the councilman for District 1, Livingston Parish.
And District 1 is a large one.
Very large one, yes.
It covers about a very large section of the central portion north of I-12 in Livingston Parish. So, today you're here to talk about there's a paintball facility inside your district that has kind of an interesting timeline. It ended up in front of you guys, very heated conversation at the parish council. So first and foremost, just there's a lot to talk about today. We want to try to ease through it point by point. I know that first and foremost, you want to kind of discuss how this sort of came to be, where this began, because there's a difference between kind of what the owner's saying, what the permit office is saying, what the parish is saying. So let's start there. According to the owner of this paintball facility, he's been open for 2 years.
For 2 years.
Which would put it May 2019.
Correct.
So let's start there with what happened with the council or with the parish in May 2019 with regard to this paintball facility.
Okay, so May 2019, the administration gets a call that there's a paintball business operating on a piece of land off of Arnold Road, just north of Walker. We send someone out there to go check. There's some minor dirt work going on. They're kind of more or less scraping the ground. Look like they're just cleaning the property off. They had come and got a shed permit, put a shed out there, got power to have power out there while they're doing all this. Now, when we approached the contractor, he said the owner was out of town. I think he was in Africa for 2 months. He's a youth minister. So he's gone for 2 months. But we were kind of back and forth the whole month of May, because we're waiting on him to come back. Got in touch with him. We need you to come in. This is a commercial business, and we need you to come get with us so we can set it up right. All the way till August, nothing's really happened.
Sure.
So administration does a stop work on them. Stop work, come in, let's get this right. I think around October, he gets in there, he gets Alvin Faber and Associates involved. They start putting a plan together. So it's December of 2019 when it's finally on the council agenda for a preliminary plat. Now, normally, that's the first thing that happens.
Right.
Is a preliminary plat. So this is 8 months of us kind of working with him, trying to get this right. It's all in black and white. Every time we've talked to him, every time we reached out to him, we got to get it right. You need to show up. Let's get it right.
Sure.
So once the preliminary plat hit the agenda, got on the council floor, I had some concerns of paintballs going in the neighbor's yard. We had concerns that they were using the same driveway as the neighbors coming off of a state highway, but that is a DOTD issue. It's still a safety concern of mine, but that's not our job.
Sure.
He needs to get with them. Well, when you submit the preliminary plat, all of that's part of it. They're going to tell we're going to tell you got to get with DOTD for your traffic study. You need to do a drainage study. You need to, anything that needs to be done, that's going to come after the preliminary plat. Normally, the council is not involved in anything else.
Right.
Once we vote on that preliminary plat.
Right.
You work with administration from that point on. Now, if you go back on your timeline, we approved this in December of 2019. It typically takes 2-3 months for you to get everything in order anyway. Well, that's about when COVID hit.
Sure.
So we're sending employees home. We're shutting offices down. We don't have nobody around. Probably 4 months we were down. we get back, we have so many work orders, backlogs. We're just trying to play catch up.
And we is parish office.
Parish office administration with a small amount of employees.
Right.
Because you can't bring but so many back. Some of them didn't want to come back. They were enjoying the unemployment benefits. So it was hard to bring people into work.
Right.
So by the time we figure out, kind of get back to normal operation, man, we never done a final inspection on this place. Owner never reached out to us either to say, hey, I still need my final inspection. So this was the end of 2020. So we got with him. I think it wound up being 2 different times they had to set it up to finally get it out there. So it was January 2019, I think, when they finally did the final inspection. They went out there.
You mean 2021?
I mean 2021 when they actually did the final inspection, right? So when they went out there to do it, it wasn't during operational hours. So nobody's there. So it's a little hard to figure out. On their preliminary plat, it did not show a parking lot. His parking area is grass.
Okay.
So there's no way for us to know that this is a parking lot.
Right.
But as far as what he had on his preliminary plat, everything seemed to be right.
Okay.
So he got his final inspection. 2 months after the final inspection, I think he had some big tournament, and it had rained the week before. Well, because his parking area was grass, couldn't really park. Because, this is a field out it used to be a cow pasture. It's just out in the middle of nowhere.
Sure.
So people were parking on the road coming in, the right-of-ways. I know there's a little dispute on who actually owns it. And technically that doesn't matter. You're still blocking a right-of-way.
Sure.
So they were parking all along the side of the road. I know that one of the neighbors even called deputies, come out there, and the deputy couldn't even drive to his house. He had to get out of his vehicle and walk down to this guy's house, which to me is a major problem.
Sure.
Sure. We could have easily he could have had someone hurt at the paintball place.
Right.
And we wouldn't have been able to get fire trucks, ambulances, anything in there.
Right.
Because the servitude was blocked. There was no way to get there. So I had received a call that said, hey, we're having this issue with this paintball place. We found some issues where they're not in compliance. What do you think? I said, well, as far as I'm concerned, give them 6 months. Let them get in compliance, but make sure that they understand 6 months in 1 day, if you're not in compliance, we're shutting you down. And to my knowledge, I think there was a meeting after that conversation where that was offered to him. He actually started building the fence because there were some issues with some fencing.
Sure.
He put up some more netting because the paintballs were getting on the neighbor's property, which was the main thing that I didn't want happening. So he actually started working. Well, then the parish comes back and says, we're going to pull a cease and desist on you. Now, I don't know all the ins and outs of that because, like I said, that's not my job.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not administration. I do know that there was an issue brought up of a pond that was dug on the property, dirt moved around on the property. There's 2 issues with that. One, you've impacted the drainage in the area by moving dirt. 2, we have a pond permit. Doesn't cost any money, but you have to have it to where the pond is sloped correctly. So if a kid falls into it on the edge, they're not falling straight down. They're falling in 2-3 inches of water. That's why we created this. So there was issues with that. Well, then it was brought up that, well, that's wetlands. Did he get a wetlands permit? Well, I don't know. We're not Army Corps of Engineers. You're going to have to call them on that. That's because like I said, This is the parking lot area. This is not even on the preliminary plat where this is done. But when they came back and we said, you have an issue with the parking. Oh yeah, it was on there. It was just left out. Well, the reason it was left out is because they didn't want to have to put gravel on it.
Sure.
You know, and in our history, we've had this with some other companies, stuff like this happen.
Right.
You know, and I do know that he did go back and he said he put some limestone on it since then. So, you know, he did do a few things. You know, but the biggest thing is to make sure that everybody understands we didn't let him open up in May of 2019 and then 2 years later roll up and say, you're not in compliance, you're shut down.
Right. There is an established between the parish and the company a back and forth.
Right. Back and forth that like I said, lasted for a good solid 8 months.
Right.
You know, a solid 8 months that it lasted.
With a little break for COVID.
And then a break for COVID. You know, so, I mean, technically, he probably wasn't open maybe 8 months, you know, at best. And that was 8 months without even having a final inspection when he was open.
Sure.
You know, now, this was brought up to the council. They wanted to get on the agenda. I told both sides of the argument. This is not the council's deal. This is administration. Y'all need to go talk with administration and figure it out. You know, all we do is write the laws. You know, it's administration's job to make sure you're in compliance. So at that point, you know, what are we going to do? You know, where do we go from here? It kind of got a little tricky at that point,
yeah.
You know, because I'm kind of begging them, don't come to the council. I just don't think it's going to benefit you. I think you would be better off going to administration, talking to them. Well, first meeting comes along. We're not going to, the owner told me, I don't want to be on the agenda. You know, it's no point at this time. That was his exact quote that he sent me. It's no point at this time. Okay. So we didn't put him on the agenda. Then I got a call the following week. There was a special meeting was being talked about for this place. And I was the one that suggested, I don't think that this grants a special meeting. You know, we have a meeting next week that they can get on. And he already had a meeting set up with administration.
Right.
Let's see what's going to happen with administration. You know, it's their job. Let's see what's going to happen. So all the councilmen pretty much agreed, you know, no special meeting. We'll just wait till the next one. Well, the owner reached out to me the Monday before our regular council meeting. Said, hey, I wanted to see if I was on the agenda. I called and I wasn't. I said, well, you hadn't called me yet, but I'll call and get it on there. Well, when I called, he was already on there. Another councilman had put it on the agenda. So into the meeting we go. Then it really gets good.
Mm-hmm.
And you can go watch the council meeting. Everybody can see it. Well, prior to the meeting, I called our office and I said, look, if the council's going to be brought into this, I want the facts. I want everything. I want to know everything that happened from the first time this business was brought up into the parish on paper. And young lady that works for us, Lauren Wright, she went to start finding all that, you know, and she had to go to the tax assessor. She had to go to administration, permitting office, sheriff's office. I mean, she went and got me everything and put together.
There's a big booklet right here on the table.
Big book right here that's got, and she did a good timeline, which is kind of what we just talked about a little earlier.
Right.
That went over that timeline. And I basically told them beforehand, I'm going to tell the parish's side of the story. I'm not trying to make someone look bad. But what everybody seems to forget is I'm voted in by the people of District 1 that live there now.
Right.
I am their spokesman.
Right.
I have to make sure that the laws that are set forth are followed to protect the people that put me in office. And that's what I'm going to do. You know, and a lot of people know that the ones that own the paintball place are family to me. Long lifetime friends to me and my family and my brothers. It was extremely hard to sit there and have to do what I did. But that's what I was voted in to do.
Right.
You know, and I was going to do what the book said to do. And the book did not give me the authority to lift a cease and desist.
Right.
That was administration that put it on him. And it was up to administration to say he was good to go back to business. So that was kind of my stance on that. The council meeting got a little heated, as you could imagine. I think it took a turn that didn't benefit the business owner at all. It got completely off focus of the business owner. I know a resolution was offered a couple of times by Councilman Wascom. I felt like the resolution was more about telling administration they're wrong than just telling administration we don't have a problem with them being open while they're getting in compliance.
Right.
You know, so that was a big issue to me.
Okay. So, you know, there's a lot to unpackage here. And I want to start kind of working backwards. We're going to start with recent memory, talking about that resolution that was offered. You know, one of the things it was compared to was the variance you had just given to some concrete being poured.
Correct.
You know, there are some differences between the two situations, some glaring ones. I'd like to hear your opinion on why you decided that a variance just was not the proper way to go, and a resolution sending that request for a variance to the administration was not the way to go.
Okay. I'm glad you brought that up. The variance on the concrete, to me, this was a safety issue. This was a company that was pouring concrete for a new apartments complex on Buddy Ellis Road. We just had someone killed on Buddy Ellis Road, walking home from their job, or they might have been on their bike. I don't remember. But
He was on a bike.
Okay, he was coming home from his job. He got run over, hit and run. Everybody knows the story. What this company was asking is for us to give them a 4-month variance to where they could pour between 3 and 5 so that they're not in the middle of school traffic, school buses, work traffic, just general daylight traffic.
Right.
Let us come in and pour and get out of the way.
Right.
You know, and it wasn't, you know, they were asking for a 4-month and we only gave them 2 months. We said, no, we'll give you 2 months and then we'll come back and revisit in 2 months.
Sure.
You know, so that was all about safety to me right there. You know, it made sense, you know, and that's why we have the authority to give variances. You know, I'm one that's probably a little harder to get a waiver from. I typically will vote against them unless you can give me a reason.
Right.
You give me a good reason of why you need this variance, you're probably going to get my vote. But if it's just, I want to add another lot because I can make more money, that's not a good reason to me.
Right.
You know, I mean, that's why we made these laws, and we need to try our best to stick to them. But
right.
we do have situations where we need to give a waiver. You know, this wasn't simple one thing that you was given a waiver on. There's a lot of things he's not in compliance with. So you couldn't do a just general variance to let him open. You couldn't do that because it was, not only was it too many things in the parish that he wasn't in compliance with, he wasn't in compliance with DOTD, DHH, Army Corps of Engineers. I mean, it was a lot of other agencies involved with that has to be cleared up.
Right.
So it was a lot bigger than just a variance to allow him to open.
Right.
The concrete place was very simple. It was, instead of starting to pour at 6, we want to do it from 3 to 5 and get out of the way.
Sure.
So,
and for one structure, one project.
One project.
And it's interesting. There were some other precedents where the idea of a variance came up just a few months back in April with Frenzies, and y'all elected to work with the business owner, work with the parish, but request that they continue to operate because a permit had been issued, and you decided, well, we're going to go after the ordinance instead of setting some kind of precedent with a variance that we don't think serves anyone.
Yeah.
Interesting. Want to come back to the property itself, because something like this always brings back to mind zoning, right?
Correct.
Because one of the things that I've talked with you about in the past, when we did the podcast in the other room, I've talked to Gary Falk Talbert on several occasions, talked to Tracy Girlinghouse, who's kind of the spark behind a lot of that.
Yes.
Y'all only have so much input in a lot of these things, and then it gets passed off to administration. And I wanted to cover that because we're going to go over each point in not a whole bunch of detail, but a little bit of detail. But y'all were given a preliminary plat. You approve that. And once that happens, it's kind of out of your hands.
Out of our hands.
Right. And I know a lot of people want to say, that's escape, or, that's a scapegoat, that's cop out, whatever, but that's the law.
Yes.
That is the way that the Livingston Parish government operates, especially without zoning. So talking about the preliminary plat, how it was issued to y'all and how it was different, let's first and foremost start off with the parking, right? If there is a problem, say rain, and it is South Louisiana, folks, got to remind everybody, it rains all the time. If they can't park on the property, they have to park in the street. Of course, that provides, again, a safety issue like you brought up with the concrete. Is there anything that y'all are thinking of or considering for the future in terms of preliminary plats for commercial businesses, structures, and parking because of this issue? Have y'all talked about that at all?
Well, I think one of the things that I think we're going to demand is you have to put your parking on there.
Okay.
Right now it's not, I guess you could say there's a loophole where it's not required to show your parking. And some people have tried to push the envelope, if you will. If we don't put it on there, then we don't have to build the parking lot. And a lot of that happened back when we required you to pave parking or concrete it.
Sure. Because
it was so expensive. But we have went in and changed that ordinance to where it just has to be pervious materials now. Right. So it can be limestone and rock, and actually this was authored by Mr. Wascom to change it.
Right. To give businesses a little more
to give them a little more break. And and this all stemmed with Brad Thompson's funeral home right here in Denham.
Right.
To allow him just the pervious materials because he needed such a big parking area for a funeral home.
Right.
And
it's hybrid. Part of it's concrete, part of it's gravel.
So we wanted an apron around the building with concrete, for handicap, things like that. Make sure that it's done a certain way when you come off of the road so people aren't spinning out with rocks. We wanted that done a certain way. So, we made changes, but we still kind of have a little bit of that mentality of don't show the parking lot.
Right.
And we got to fix that.
Sure.
You're going to have to show your parking lot. We have to hold these people accountable that's coming in to open up a commercial development, or commercial business, and it's impacting the people that already live here.
Sure.
We got to put them in thought first.
And they elected you.
They elected, correct.
And what's interesting about some people might say, well, they're just parked on the street, but it is paintball. Mm-hmm. People's masks fail from time to time. Paintballs can injure. Mm-hmm. And one of the things you brought up before we got started, what if somebody comes out there, and everybody thinks it's a paintball gun and it turns out to be a real gun?
Real gun.
Law enforcement can't get there, fire, ambulance. So there are issues, there are safety issues there. Moving on, it's a very, very, very hot topic right now. Outside of this, of course,
Yeah.
Drainage, and of
Yes.
course he's done several things that have impacted drainage that have kind of moved past the preliminary plat. What you brought up, the pond, more dirt work, because as I understand it, he added a field, an extra field, not just two, but a third. And then there was a nearby drainage ditch that he took it upon himself to modify, which of course is a big no-no these days. So kind of walk us through those things, the things that changed past the preliminary plat, because it sounds to me like the fact that he continued to modify his property without pulling permits, without talking to the parish, and at the same time not being real communicative, kind of pushed the parish in a direction of, okay, we got to stop this for a second. So tell us a little bit about those changes and how that works sort of against his story, I guess you can say.
So the pond, you know, like I said, we touched on that earlier. You know, he dug the pond to get dirt. So, I mean, that's normally what most people do. I've also been told that he allows kids to fish, you know, might come there with their family and they're able to fish. And I think that could be a little bit of a hazard myself because, like I said, we don't know how the edges are dug. But, you know, I mean, you're enticing people to come to your facility with paintball, and then you have a pond that they could just walk up to. You know, and I actually watched something the other day where they were kind of hammering Biden about the Border Patrol, and one of them brought up that there's supposed to be a fence around it because when you build something that entices people to come to, almost like a swimming pool, a pond, or anything like that, you're supposed to have a fence around it.
Right.
You know, and I was, just because of this topic, I'm sitting there going, hey, them kind of go hand in hand, but, you know, I don't know that that's something that we really hold them to. You know, most of the time that's an insurance thing.
Right.
It's what the insurance requires.
Sure.
You know, but the drainage is the main thing. He impacted that. I haven't personally seen the ditch that was widened. I was told by 3 different neighbors in the area that it was dug and widened.
Okay.
One of them has reached out to me that she is holding water that she didn't before. You know, normally when it would rain, she wouldn't have water in her yard. Now she does. You know, and what's sad about drainage is sometimes you don't know if that's really the culprit.
Yeah.
I mean, there could be a tree fell out there in the woods somewhere that's blocking up drainage. You know, you don't really know that it's him. So all you can go by is you impacted the earth with the way you moved it.
Right. You kind of made yourself the target.
Right. So also on his plat, he showed 2 playing fields. There's a third one now that is in the woods that some wooden structures have been built, maybe out of old pallets or different things like that, just stuff to hide behind, you know, in an area that was really a wooded area that was natural drainage.
Right.
You know, and we have had people come and stand at the council that were professionals that do this for a living that have told us every shovel of dirt makes a difference.
Right.
You move 1 shovel of dirt and it makes a difference.
Sure.
So, I mean, I think that was where originally we did kind of say, well, you're not impacting the earth. You're just going to put a few blow up things out there and y'all going to shoot some paintballs. No need to do no big, extensive drainage impact. But then once the pond was dug, the little bayou was kind of opened up a little bit. You put the dirt on the property. You really kind of changed the direction of the flow, of natural flow.
Now you need a drainage impact.
You need to do a drainage impact study.
Right.
You know?
And you know, Frog comes in all the time and discusses, you know, one of the things y'all have learned with drainage is you have to look upstream and downstream.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if the owner had done that.
Yes.
So, you know, as we move forward and we're kind of thinking about this as sort of as a total package, it's not necessarily about a business potentially being open for 2 years and then y'all just said no. It's
Correct.
about a multi-level deal between what the council's powers are, what the parish's powers are, and the hoops that business owners have to jump through.
Yes.
And what's interesting about this is you and I already talked about parking, and potential to look at that in the future. Throwing a little curveball at you here, but I know that a lot of times you and Mr. Girlinghouse help each other with your
Correct.
parish council stuff. When you're thinking about zoning, do situations like this kind of push you in a direction of I need to get behind this?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, we've had issues. I mean, I'm on year 6. Year 6 right now of being a councilman. We've had a gun range that zoning would have fixed. There was a gravel pit the year before we took office that zoning would have fixed. Here we have a paintball. To be honest, if we had zoning, it would have never been allowed to go there.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's a residential area, and you're putting a commercial business right in the middle of residence.
Right.
It would have never been there.
Right.
I mean, but we don't have that power to stop it. Right now, if it meets the ordinance,
and it goes.
It goes.
Sure.
And we don't have the power to stop it. It's all thing we have is, man, the reason this got in was because this ordinance didn't say this. So let's go change this ordinance to say it. Unfortunately, that one just got in.
Right.
Just like frenzies that you brought up a while ago.
Sure.
So
another interesting part is this kind of brings up, we were looking at the plat map before. This brings up the idea of land rights and the requirements between separation, which zoning would help. But there was another problem in that, you never know if there's any sort of malice or misrepresentation on behalf of the owner. We're not suggesting that. He believed that he owned a certain piece of property. It turned out that he didn't, and there was a required fence or some sort of natural barrier that was supposed to go there.
Correct.
That had not gone there. What's a good way to avoid that in the future?
Well, I mean, we do have a pretty good mapping system with the assessor's office now. We have ran into a couple of things that we've called on it that, we can't quite use it for that, but for the most part, it's about 95% accurate. It's a pretty good mapping system that to me, it should be used as a checks and balance. When they turn this stuff in and say they own that property, I don't know that we have someone checking that. I don't know if they're just going by what the people are turning in, or are we, checking to make sure it's correct? I mean, I would think we are, but once again, that's administration. I don't know how they checking to make sure they're getting factual stuff turned into them.
Sure. So, I mean, there's, there possibly are some issues going through the process. But at the end of the day, it was established that the parish had spent, minus COVID, probably 8 to 9 months working with this business. Things just kept evolving without permits, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So in the future, looking down the line to try to avoid such issues, what are y'all's any plans in the works, or do you think that's going to be something that zoning would just probably encompass and fix?
I really think zoning would fix the majority of it, and it would be a whole lot easier to do it through zoning, just because of the way the zoning laws are wrote.
Sure.
So I really think that would be the easier fix to me versus trying to pull every single ordinance that has to mention this in some fashion or form, where if you just have zoning, it's a lot easier to fix it.
Sure.
So I would lean a little more towards the zoning part to fix it. I think you're going to see a lot more attention paid to a preliminary plat when it's brought across this group of councilmen right here.
Sure. Looking for parking spaces.
You're looking for parking spaces. making sure that when you say you own the adjacent property because you don't want to put a fence, that you do own that adjacent property. Or if you tell us the neighbor's okay with you not putting a fence, that we make sure the neighbor is okay with you not putting a fence, and making sure that administration does the homework to make sure it's all right.
Sure. And it's not just a bunch of people coming and talking.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
There's some data like you brought today to go behind it. One last thing, there were with any situation like this, there are sort of periphery issues and problems. I know that you have discussed with the council sort of, I guess you could call it social media rules for both you and council employees. Anything you want to say to that other than y'all are thinking about it and might institute something later on down the road?
Yes, I mean this brought up some an issue with some stuff that happened on social media, and like all businesses nowadays, they run into an issue with an employee on social media, something that happened, and they go write a policy for social media for their employees, and this is something that brought up that, hey, we need a policy.
Right.
We need a policy of what you can and can't do. And we need a policy of how we're going to reprimand you if you do it.
Right.
So that was some conversations have been held today with some of the other councilmen, and that's going to be coming in the future.
Okay. Well, anything you'd like to say as we wrap up here?
The only other thing I want to add is I know some people had brought up the fact of why don't y'all have a weekly, podcast or Facebook page or something to keep the people informed of what's going on? We do. It's right here. This is our journal. We vote on it every year. I think you've had Mr. Talbot here 4 times this year. Mr. Mack's been here twice. Mr. Garlinghouse has been here. I've been here. I mean, when we have a hot topic, we call you. Hey, we need to sit down and inform our people what's going on.
Sure.
And that's why I'm here today.
And sometimes, y'all have some meetings that don't really have a hot topic.
Correct.
Or it might turn into a hot topic later, and we'll cover it then. Yeah. But sometimes it's just a lot of land transfers and maybe a few reports. So, but we do appreciate you taking the time to come sit down and talk with us. We know this is a pretty contentious topic, a lot of going back and forth. We will be writing this up for Thursday's paper, and of course we have some facts to go with the communication between the business owner and the parish. So, Mr. Ard, I'm going to ask you to reintroduce yourself as we head on out.
Yes, Jeff Ard, Councilman 1 District for Livingston Parish.
And my name is McHugh David, publisher and editor of the news. Appreciate you guys checking in and joining us for this show. And we do hope that you will find us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, and YouTube. We are once a week in print on Thursdays at $7 a month to get that in your mailbox. We're also online, www.livingstonparishnews.com. We appreciate you joining us, and we'll check you out next time.